Welcome back to the Shine and Thrive Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Monica. I am so excited for today's episode because we're finally talking about animals and dogs more specifically and how to be a dog photographer. And this could range anywhere from literally specializing in photographing dogs, like only in studio, or photographing families with dogs or couples with dogs, or anything you want, any kind of niche you want, and you'd actually be really, really shocked and surprised of the amount of money and income you can actually make from being specialized as a pet photographer. We focus on talking about dogs because in general, all pets have so many different there's so much to know about, like, for example, how a cat behaves compared to a dog or a bird or a horse. So in this episode, we're focusing on dogs since those are like the most common animal that families have and couples have. But I'm really excited because Nicole she just like dives into talking about how to actually work with dogs with getting the behavior that you want out of them during sessions, whether it's literally you're just photographing portraits of the dog itself or with a family or a couple, which I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I photograph engagement sessions with dogs, I love it. I love that I get to document that, but it adds another level of complexity. And there's a lot going on, and sometimes you have to like hold the dog on the side, and sometimes you're trying to figure out how to get the dog to like look at the camera. So we cover all of that. She talks about different like safety options, which are so key to know. Different like signs to look out for on how to make sure the dog feels comfortable. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure the dog is having a good time, feeling comfortable, but also that's how we're going to actually get amazing photos out of the pets as well. We talk about how to get good expression, perspective, so much, so much. And so I'm going to quickly introduce you to Nicole first, and then we'll dive into the episode. So Nicole is a zoological animal trainer turned pet photographer and educator. I just think that's like the coolest thing ever. She is also mildly obsessed with numbers, Trello boards, pricing, and all aspects of running a business. So much that she actually runs four freaking businesses. Oh my gosh, whenever I hear that, I'm like, holy moly. So, Hair of the Dog Academy is her main focus, where she empowers pet photographers to turn their dreams into reality and helps them create successful and very profitable businesses. Her passion project is running her nonprofit, Hair of the Dog Conservation Fund, whose mission is protecting our global biodiversity and inspiring individual action by supporting conservation projects for wild animals and the surrounding communities. Okay, this I'm just so impressed. Like this is just so incredible, and I'm so grateful for what she puts into this world and how she helps our world, especially animals. Man, animals just really have a soft spot in me. And in her downtime, Nicole spends far too much money and time with her horse. Again, jealous goals. I've always wanted a horse. I'm like still figuring out how I'm going to make that happen. And she loves exploring this incredible planet that we live on and testing all the chocolate martinis. I love that she does that. For me personally, I like testing espresso martinis, new favorite drink I've recently discovered. So yeah, that's a little bit about Nicole, and yeah, enjoy tuning into today's episode. It's actually going to be very insightful, more insightful than you might think if you are interested in thinking about photographing pets, or you sometimes come across dogs or pets on sessions and you're like, how do I make this easier? How do I give my clients the photos I really want to create for them? So enjoy.
Welcome, Nicole. I'm so excited to have you here. Like, genuinely so freaking excited because 140 something episodes deep, and I still haven't talked about pet photography on the podcast. So it's about freaking time. And I know this is an area you specialize in with teaching and photographing and all of that. So I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Oh my gosh.
And okay, so just for everybody listening, this is kind of like the breakdown of the episode. This is kind of like the plan that we have in mind. So firstly, we want to touch on, I'm just going to ask Nicole, how can pet photography actually be profitable? Because I know a lot of you that are listening are kind of like in the beginning stages of trying to figure out your photography business and what you even want to focus on photographing. And I know for a lot of you, you might even be like, oh my gosh, wait, I love animals so much. I just never actually thought of photographing pets and animals as a profitable photography business option. So we're going to dive into that. And then we're going to actually talk about, okay, on a session, how to actually work with dogs, get the behavior you want, get the best perspective, lighting, all of that. So that's super exciting. And at the end, we're just going to toss in also some tips on how you can work with dogs if you're a photographer that photographs couples or families, and you have actual humans to photograph with animals at the same time, which can feel chaotic sometimes. And literally yesterday I had an engagement session, Nicole, where they had their 2 dogs in their backyard, and out of nowhere they threw like a stick for the dog to run after, and I was standing in the path, this narrow path of where the dog started running towards. But I'm like, oh yeah, the dog, he'll know
He'll
my
stop.
legs are there, he'll stop. No, like ran into my shin. And I'm always like, I never want the clients to worry that like I got hurt, because they'll feel bad, they'll think
Right, yeah.
overthinking, and they're like, oh my god, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Inside I'm like, oh my god, that tooth got my shin.
Oh, ouch. You're like, am I bleeding?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, it's so funny. That random story. But yeah, so let's start about, maybe give us the down low of like, how can a photographer, I know this is a big obviously conversation, but I think I just want to just inspire like the possibility and hope for someone that loves
Oh,
animals.
yeah.
Like, tell us, what are some possibilities? Like, how profitable can a pet photography business be?
Well, how profitable do you want your photography business to be? Because that's the bigger question. Truly, pet photography ranges the gamut from the same as families and weddings, from people that are, kind of shoot and burn, all inclusive, to, 5-figure sales from a pet photography portrait session. So really the sky's the limit here, depending on what you want to do. I think personally, from me seeing lots of different photography businesses, the quickest way to a 6-figure pet photography business is to have a consistent $2,500 to $3,000 session average, which is actually really pretty straightforward and easy to do if you are selling artwork, doing in-person sales, and just really kind of providing that boutique experience. And yeah, it's
Wow.
really available. So when I started my photography business in 2010, there were like 3 pet photographers in Seattle, and like that was it. It was not a thing really yet. And I started my business with a family portrait photographer, and then I also kind of did pets as well, because my previous 13 years I was a zoological animal trainer, loved animals. I mean, would have just done pets and horses, but I was like, well, there's no way that can be profitable on its own. But it turns out, yes, it is, especially now in 2023, when it's definitely more of a thing. And a lot of people start to get concerned that it's like, oh, wait, there's so many more pet photographers entering the market, but there's still not as many as families or wedding photographers. So it's still a very small niche, but our potential clients are learning more about it. So when I started, it had an additional challenge of marketing your business, but also letting people that you would market your business to know that this was even a thing, that it existed, and they weren't crazy for wanting to get photos of their dog and spending thousands of dollars on them.
Yeah, the education part. Yeah, normalizing
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, 100%. But truly I did family photography for a good 6 years, and, had some great sales, had a $3,000 average during that, doing wall art for my clients. And all of my biggest sales have been pets. So, yeah, I mean,
Wow.
people love their pets. It's just
That's,
a
yeah.
little bit of a different target. So
Yeah.
generally, not always, I've had some great family sessions that included their pets, that it was focused on the pets, but like also had some pictures with the family. But most of my pet clients tend to be professional single women, or married professionals that don't have kids. Some empty nesters, but I tend to attract the younger crowd.
Yeah, so they're literally, their pets are their babies.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I'm even shocked. Like again, I'm someone that I love to like think of like all the limitless possibilities we can create whatever success we want. But again, I'm just like, wait, I've never actually like thought about, pet photography ever. So to
Right.
hear you're like, yeah, it could be just as profitable as weddings. And the amount of times I even hear photographers kind of settle for weddings, maybe because they're not super passionate about it, but they're like, but that's where the money is. That's where I
Mm,
make money. And it breaks my heart to hear that because this is why we were having this conversation. It's
mhm,
just putting it out there. Hey, like it's possible just because maybe you
mhm.
haven't heard it's not possible. Like this is why we're saying it now. So
Oh my gosh.
you don't
Yeah.
have to
And
settle.
if you don't love weddings, you should not be doing weddings.
Yeah.
Like the amount of hours for a wedding, for the wedding paycheck, you can get pretty darn close to that paycheck with many less hours in portraits if you go for that high end, no matter what portrait market you're serving. So you just need to love what you're shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for um just like even mentioning that. And for those of you that want to even learn more about this whole pet photography topic and all the possibilities, Nicole has her podcast, Hair of the Dog podcast. So you can
Mhm.
also subscribe to that. And I'm sure she shares a whole shit ton more on there where she dives in deeper into all of that.
Yeah, we're almost
Um,
200 episodes on there,
oh my
so
gosh, that's
there's a
incredible.
lot of resources.
That's amazing. Wow. Congrats on that.
Thanks, thanks.
Okay, so let's switch over to actual like working with dogs. Like, you know I sometimes like I love it when I get to have dogs on sessions. But I also get a little bit more like anxious and a little more stressed out because it's just another element out of your control.
Mhm.
It's super fun because like there's so much energy and all of that, but sometimes they could just be extra energetic and every dog is so different. Some of them are
Oh
just
yeah.
chill lap dogs, right? But some are just like they can't sit still. They're like a cracked out squirrel or something. Right. And so, yeah, what are some ways that photographers can get the behavior that they want with a
Yes.
dog while photographing them? Or
Yeah,
sorry,
well,
a pet. Are we
yeah,
talking?
yeah.
Yeah, but dogs
Mostly
in general.
dogs.
It's like
Yeah, mostly
mostly
dogs.
because,
Yeah, I would
yeah,
say 90% of my clients are dogs, maybe
yeah,
10, 15% horses, and like a very random outlier of cats. And so for this conversation,
yeah,
we're going to focus on the dogs. Horses are quite literally a totally different animal and are managed
yeah,
differently. And same thing with cats. Like
yeah.
you photograph cats, they're sight driven and just like completely different behaviorally.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we're going to focus on dogs. And one of the most important pieces is you need to love it. You need to love the dogs. You need to have a lot of patience in terms of dogs. Like I could set up a dog for a shot 37,000 times, but if you say like, "Hey, you're going to do a newborn shot today or newborn shoot," I'd be like, "Please, please no." I can't wait for that baby to fall asleep. Oh my god. Like it's just no thanks. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we all
You
need
have
to
to love
follow
it.
what we love
Mhm.
because then you're going to have the patience because here's the other thing. Every single owner thinks their dog is not going to be up to the task to create these images. They all think their dog is horribly unbehaved, uncooperative. There's no way you're going to get these images of their dog. So that has to be addressed like on your website when you're talking to them at the session, reassuring them like, this is cool. Your dog is normal. Like
Mm.
this is what we're doing. So then let's talk a little bit about like the behavior. So it's really important. One of the first things, which whatever animal you're working with, whether it is cats, horses, dogs, that you know a little bit about that natural history of these dogs and even the different breeds, because photographing a greyhound is very different than photographing a beagle, is very different than photographing a chihuahua, is very different than photographing a Great Dane. And then within those breeds, then there's also dogs that are like people reactive or dog reactive. So being familiar with your subject is really, really important, and being familiar with their body language. So you can start to see when they might be feeling uncomfortable. I mean, I think most people are familiar with like, oh, that dog's growling. Okay, that's not good.
Yeah.
But there's so many subtle things that
Mhm.
the dogs are telling us as we're starting, like, are they just kind of looking away and not wanting to look at us? They're nervous. Are they kind of panting a little bit more than usual when it's not really that hot out and it's like a fast, shallow pant? That's nerves too. They're scared. Are they lip licking a lot, or are they, the hairs up on their back just a little tiny bit? These are all just kind of signs that we're like, oh, this dog's not real comfortable. How can we adjust that? Which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important. It's so important to be familiar with these different signals that they give in their body language, which you can watch YouTube videos if you don't have a dog. There's a lot of great dog trainers out there that are showcasing these different dog body languages that you can start to kind of see those difference. So you can start to pick up on that, because I think that is the most important skill if you are going to be doing this, because that's going to set the dog up and yourself to be able to get the best images from the session where the dog doesn't look nervous, because the owner knows their dog. Even if the owner doesn't know really great body language, they do still know, like, oh, if my dog's like heads down a little bit and the ears are a little sideways versus like leaning into the camera and like really happy. So it's really important to just kind of start to get comfortable with that and learn that.
That makes so much sense. It's so funny. As soon as you're like, you have to kind of like get to know the dog, and like you're saying like the natural history plus like the body language, because I photographed couples, my mind went straight to like a funny where it was like, oh yeah, how the dog fill out a questionnaire about themselves. So usually I feel comfortable in these situations more. And
yes, I actually do have my client. Now I do all my like client questionnaire stuff just on the phone with them.
Yeah.
But I used to have them fill out a form and it was from the dog.
Yeah. Cute.
So it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely important to make sure that your client doesn't feel bad about like, hey, my dog's dog reactive, or my dog's scared of people or scared of men or whatever reason, to letting them know that like, hey, we're going to work with your dog. And so if your dog's super reactive to other dogs, well, we're going to go to a location that doesn't have other dogs. So just kind of knowing that. But one of the other skills that's really, really, really helpful is learning a little bit about operant conditioning or positive reinforcement. So bonus, this works really well on your kids, works really well on your spouse, works really well on anyone else too. So I always like to joke that you can train anything that eats or has some other kind of reinforcement that they prefer. But really it comes down to reinforcing the behavior that you want and kind of ignoring or redirecting the behavior that you don't. One of the ways that I do almost every session is when I first meet the dog. First of all, I'm usually kind of ignoring the dog for a minute, as much as I want to like, oh my God, it's a puppy. Let me pet you. Let me see, and I gotta like stifle myself because I don't want to scare the dog. If somebody did that to my dog, who's people reactive, like she would just hold a grudge against that person and be like terrified for the whole entire session. So I kind of ignore the dog at first. I talk to my clients. And then, maybe I'll kind of squat down on the ground, let the dog approach me. I'm not going to look the dog directly in the eyes, because if I'm staring at the dog's eyes, that's a threat to them. Like that's when two dogs walk to each other, like staring each other in the eyes. You got to be careful, because that at any minute can turn into like a bad situation. That's very aggressive. That's why they usually go around and sniff each other's butts. It's not threatening. Not saying you have to sniff butts. Don't recommend it. But anyway, so I kind of squat down, let the dog approach me. I'll get my camera out. I might just click the shutter, just not even pointing at the dog, just click the shutter, give him a little treat, just to make sure there's no reaction, that the dog is still calm and happy and exhibiting that, like, just calm body language. And, if there is a situation where the dog's nervous of the camera, I just have it here and I'm like, I click it, I give him a treat. I click it, I give him a treat. It's just
conditioning.
Pairing this positive experience with this kind of scary thing, because from a dog's perspective, there's this giant lens staring at them. It's like a giant eye. It can be pretty uncomfortable. So It's really just kind of really paying attention to that body language as you start to work with them. And along that reinforcement front, the whole time through the session, this happens a lot at our workshops that we teach, where we'll have students and they're really excited, they're like, and this aqueduct in front of France, like, or this aqueduct in France, like, I get it. I'd like be really excited and be shooting too. And we have to remind them like, hey, you got to pay your client. Like, you need to pay your model here. Your dog's been standing so patiently, like, let's release them. Let's give them a treat. So the dog knows they're doing a good job and, they're getting reinforced and having good behavior, so you're able to kind of let the dog know what the good behavior is. And by the end of the session, the owner's usually like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. Literal dog whisper.
Yes, 100%. And my dog just broke into my office. So if there's barking all of a sudden, my husband's mowing the grass.
It's perfect. Perfect episode for it.
Yes. So that's definitely some important things to learn. And if you want to learn more about operant conditioning, there's a great book. It's called Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. It's a really easy read, and it just gives you all the basics of operant conditioning.
Awesome. Love a good book recommendation.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one of the other things. Yeah. I'll say one of the other things that people always want to, I guess one of the most important, these are all so important. One of the other foundational principles of pet photography is getting that great expression, because from photographing people, gosh, especially like families, the expression makes it or breaks it, like if dad's sitting back there with a frown on his face, like no one's going to want to put that on the wall. So we need to have great expression. How do you get great expression of the dogs? I've got a whole little tricks up my sleeve. I'll tell you in a second. But the key is, and this is for if you're photographing the dog alone, or if you're photographing the dog with a couple or a family, like get all your people set up. Get your camera settings set up, take a test shot, make sure you have everything that you need completely dialed in. And then you can make a really unusual little noise and boop, click that real quick. So like, I'm always telling my people, like, you ignore the dog. Don't look at the dog. Don't tell the dog to look at me. Don't point for the dog to look at me. Like the dog doesn't understand. Look where you're pointing. Like, what are you doing? Don't say the dog's name. Then they're looking at the dog. So I basically just tell any of my families or couples that I'm ever photographing the dog, like, leave the dog alone. Just hold on to it. I'm going to get the dog's attention. You just focus on whatever I want them to do. And then once you get that all set up, then you can make a little noise or to get their attention. So,
oh my God, I've been doing this. Do you want to know what my noise is?
Yeah, I would love to know. It
actually works for kids too.
Yeah.
It's called the pterodactyl.
Ooh.
And I literally, I'm going to make it, but I'm going to have to go far away from my microphone because it's really ear piercing. I literally do that. I'm like, okay, you guys do this. Okay. I'm going to get the dog's attention. I'm going to make a really weird noise. You guys don't even have to look at your dog. And then I go, the dog just like turns around and looks at me, and you sometimes I get the head tilt.
Yes. So exactly.
Like
novel noises are the best. But here's the challenge when you're doing a whole entire session with dogs, like that pterodactyl is going to work once, maybe twice, probably not 3, certainly not 4 times.
And your throw won't last.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to have a deep pile of expression getting ways. I usually start off really small. So I'll start with a little like some little whining voices. And, sometimes I'll ask the client to do they have any sayings? Like, you want to go for a ride? You want to go for a walk? Like things like that to perk up their ears. I will sometimes have a squeaker, and, the one that is like no fail, at least a few times, is a cottontail rabbit distress call. So it's a hunting call. I don't even know what animal someone's hunting to use this, but it's a cottontail rabbit distress call. And you make it, and the dogs are like, oh, and you can blow on both sides, and it makes a different noise. And it's really small and light. You can just keep it in your mouth so you have your hands free. fantastic.
Oh, nice. So like a whistle you can buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can definitely check out different hunting calls online, or if you have like an outdoor store near you.
That's a
Because
great tip.
yeah, those
Great.
calls are really helpful. And yeah, so things like that, squeaker, toys, balls. I usually do ask my clients, like, what's your dog into? And you need to have this conversation with them too, because certain dogs, like, I don't know, Goldens, Mastiffs, St. Bernards, like if you pull out food, all of a sudden there's just going to be drool. Or they might just be like totally hyper focused on the food. So maybe we don't pull out food for them. But if there's a dog that's like really nervous, okay, I'm pulling out the like stinkiest food that like we're going to make friends. And then, you know, there's like the sight hounds that you can make that cottontail rabbit noise like once or twice, but then they don't care about any noise ever again for the rest of the session. So then you have to like move things because they're sight hounds. So they are attracted to movement. So there's just so many different things. Oh, and then the other one too, the border collies are like famous for, if you pull out a ball, like all of a sudden you have one expression, and it is like the ball manic face of just like total focus, not blinking, like they look insane. Yeah. So you need to have that conversation with the owner, like what's reinforcing? Is there anything that like pushes them into like way too much focus, or like into the zone where they can't come out of it and they're just like totally obsessed? And then I would try to avoid those unless you really need it towards the end or something.
Oh my gosh, look at all these freaking tips. And this is just like literally the tip of the iceberg. And it's like, well, this is why pet photographers can get paid the big bucks.
There are so many. And this is why we always tell our clients, like, I got you. Don't worry, your dog just has to be a dog. And also why when I would have like my friends that maybe do families or newborns, like come and assist because maybe I need help with some equipment. So many of them be like, I don't know how you do this. I'm like, well, I don't know how you photograph a newborn, so we're fair.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah. Every niche has like so much to know about it.
Yeah. Well, it's same thing like newborns. Like the first time I learned, I'm like, oh, this is how you do those and these poses. Yeah. And that's all Photoshop and this and that. And I'm like, I get it. There's so many little tips for every single niche.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so do you feel like, okay, so actually I was wondering, so also with all of this and all these tips, what about like situations where, like, I know you mentioned safety, that safety is key. Oh, yeah. Is that for like safety of you, the dog, like everyone? What do you what are you focused on? And what are some key things to know around that?
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely want to keep the safety of the dog in terms of like, if I'm in the city, if the dog doesn't have a good recall, even if the owner says, hey, the dog's great off leash, and we take him off leash, and I'm like, I can obviously see that the dog is about to like zip off into the woods and never listen to us again. I'm going to say, let's put a leash back on. So we want to keep the dog safe. We also want to keep our subject safe and ourselves safe. And especially if you're a family photographer that sometimes photographs dogs, and the dog's coming along for this family session, and mom's stressed because she had to get all the kids together and out of the house. Dad wants to go watch the football game, doesn't really want to be there. And the dog's just like, oh my God, why is everybody so frustrated and scared? And like, what's happening? And now who's this person over here? And now the kids, now the kids are like climbing on me. So even if the dog's like really, really mellow at home, like this situation, they're at a different spot. They could be keyed up. Maybe there's a dog there and like the family doesn't even know that the dog's nervous about the other dog. So like, there's just so many other variables, right? That could cause a dog to behave a little bit differently. So it's imperative that we're really keeping an eye on that behavior of the dog. So behaviorists have this thing called a ladder of aggression, basically, which is like the top is biting and then it's like growling. And a lot of us don't really notice that until it's like way up there. But it starts with all those things I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast of just like the avoidance or the whale eye, which is like the white around their eyes, or a little bit of hair on the back of their neck, or that little bit of a lip licking, or their gum, like their side of their mouth just gets like really stiff. And another challenge is some dogs have been reprimanded whenever they showed any sort of behavior like that. So they've kind of gone away from giving you those communication cues. So like a dog that actually is going to growl or is going to do this is actually a good thing, because then
they're
we
communicating,
know,
hey,
yeah,
I feel like I'm gonna bite, and this is a sign for you to stop things happening before I
exactly.
bite.
Yeah. So it's really important that we just keep an eye on those like lower things so that we can kind of stop it before it gets to that that higher point.
Yeah, that's a
Generally,
great
it's
point.
not going to be an issue, but I think we have a responsibility to kind of keep an eye on that.
So do you have an example of like a situation where maybe you felt like maybe the location or something was making the dog uncomfortable, and then did you have to like make a call of like, okay, we need to move or go somewhere else, or
I've had lots
change the
usually,
energy?
yeah, change the energy for sure. I've had lots of, generally we're pretty good with location choosing because my clients have been pretty good, and I can like really dig into the questions of like getting down to where the dog might be comfortable. And even the places that are more crowded where I shoot usually still have places that we can get away. But this happens a lot where the dogs are fine off leash. And all of a sudden they're just like
she did air quotes,
running,
by the way, for those of you that didn't see.
Quote, fine off leash, end quote. And all of a sudden like the dog's just running around, and then the person's super stressed. Then it's like, all right, let's put the dog on a leash. And usually I'd say just take a minute. Actually, throughout most sessions, there's a lot of, all right, let's just take a minute, let the dog just sniff around, because if a dog starts to get kind of stressed, like them sniffing is like a release for them. It's them doing what they're supposed to do, and they just can it can calm them down. Same thing with horses. If they start to get like really amped up, just like find some grass, let them graze. It like just releases their endorphins, like just gets them to like settle. So there's times where we just need to take a minute, and that's fine. And I will sometimes even say like, hey, I'm going to go check out the light over here, this location over here, just to like walk away for a minute. So that way the owner can like settle for a minute, like if people are amped up. And just in general too, the dog, because when we're shooting, like I'm asking the dog to be attentive to me, and, maybe we're asking it for a sit or a stay, or it's working. So then giving it that break to be a dog, sniff around. And then, I'm never shy of just telling my client, hey, hang out here for a minute. I'm going to go around this corner and see what it looks like over here. Just to kind of give everybody a moment. And I don't want to drag them over there and then be like, oh, never mind.
Exactly.
The light looks terrible.
Yeah,
Let's go back this way. So I always just, you guys wait.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's great advice. And okay, so now that all of those things are like taken care of, it's time to like focus more on now the shooting part. What advice do you have around expression or getting like a better shot through like perspective?
Yeah. So the quickest way to take your pet photos from like meh to, oh my God, that's amazing, like scroll stopping pet image, pet image.
Stoppy, I like that.
Is changing your perspective and getting down on the pet's level. So like getting that camera literally on the ground or by their paws and kind of shooting up on them a little bit more. Or even if you're in a long lens, like making sure you're on that same plane, like the same height of your dog, so that they are truly filling that frame and the horizon is at their feet level. Because a lot of times we see the whole world from, 5 feet in the air. And so if we're standing, taking a picture of a dog, like often the kind of horizon is going to go through their shoulders. You're going to get like the dog split between sky and the ground. And it's just the same view that we have of dogs all the time. But if you're staying in that same spot and you get really low, no matter what lens you're using, all of a sudden you're in the dog's world, and we're not used to seeing dogs from that perspective. And then the dog becomes the main subject in that image, and I mean, it's as simple as that quick shift.
Mhm.
And then of course you can go the other direction too, and kind of have that perspective of the dog looking up at you and shooting down. However, caveat for that is to get those like puppy dog eye shots where the dog's sitting and looking up and all adorable.
Yeah.
Owners love it because they see that face and
Mhm.
like, can't help but give that face a treat when it looks like that. But remember that big eye scarier over the dog's head. Like that's not a shot that I really ever try to get early in the session. That's
Mm.
something that I might wait till the very end to get because the dog's more comfortable with me. He knows that like this is a fun game now. He's not scared of my camera anymore. So then I can kind of be over them a little bit more to get that shot where I'm shooting straight down on them. So that's important just to keep in mind. And again, really keeping an eye for any of those like head hunching down, shoulders hunching
Mhm.
up, like just kind of avoidance behaviors, looking away and just scrapping it because you might not be able to get that shot with every dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Great advice. Yeah. I love the like close up shots of dogs where they're like, they literally look like they're smiling. It's like, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so magical. And it's like, yeah, you're right. It fills the frame and it's literally like a portrait of a dog. And those are the
Mhm.
things that the photos that, owners want to hang up on their walls. So those
Yeah,
are
for
so
sure.
beautiful. And how about, because you also mentioned before the call that, some breeds and like depending on their fur, like it's harder to get the right lighting. So I know for
Oh yeah.
me, like with like darker dogs, so it's sometimes even hard to like if their eyes are dark,
Oh my gosh.
it's like I'm like their
Especially
eyes
like
don't
the
show up and I'm
doodles
like
of the
how
world. You people with your doodles and the hair over their eyes, they're so deep
oh like
set.
the dark dude. Oh my
Uh-huh. Oh
gosh.
my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, their eyes are so deep set and there's
Mm.
the hair and my camera's always like there's
So
no
you
eye
need
here. It's
some
just
kind of
not.
lighting for catch lights, right?
Yeah. Yeah, generally, I mean, you do definitely I always try to think about those catch lights. So like my
Mhm.
favorite place is sometimes open shade, but open sky kind of above behind me. So then you get those big, beautiful catch lights.
Mhm.
Um, but with dark dogs, especially, it can be even more challenging than like a wedding day because, you got white dress, dark tux or dark suit. But with dogs, the black fur, sometimes it's matte, sometimes it's shiny. And the
Yeah.
shiny fur can be really challenging because it has so much like specular highlights and can like have
Yeah,
so
that's
much
true.
dynamic range in it. So as a general rule, trying to have a bit more of kind of flat, even lighting. So like the open shade is
Mhm.
really a can't miss with black dogs.
Mhm.
And as long as you have some sort of still open light source. So if you're in a park, like maybe it's at the edge of where the like shade starts to be not too deep into the trees, because then you're not going to have enough light for their face.
Yeah.
But it's nice, even lighting towards the edge of the light. There's still some open sky above you, like a front porch or like facing a big window inside. You're going to get that nice, beautiful, even light, nice big catch lights. So that is like perfect dog lighting, any
Yeah.
color, all the time, super easy.
Yeah.
Once you get outside and start doing some more backlighting or some other like full sun or any other more challenging lighting scenarios, it is a little bit more challenging because that white fur, like on a backlight, will just blow out the rim lighting of it like really quickly.
Yeah.
And you also need to be careful of like a black and white dog, like on their face, if they're looking up in like even open shade, like make sure you're not blowing out those highlights.
Yeah.
So general rule of thumb for me is I expose for the highlights because I don't want to blow those out. It's much
Mhm.
easier to bring up the shadows than to recover the highlights.
Yes,
So we'll usually
definitely.
go for preserving the highlights, and then I'll just pull up the shadows a lot of times in editing.
Yeah. Same. I'm like, I always underexpose like the tiniest amount just in
Mm-hmm.
case, because especially with the candid work of like people
Oh
moving
yeah.
around a lot and it's like the emotion first before
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
scenery. I'm like, I'm just gonna underexpose on purpose
Uh-huh.
by a
Yeah.
stop because then I'm
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay, that's amazing. And how about, okay, so I feel like you've like covered so much with like just photographing dogs, but also in like scenarios with family photos
Mhm.
or like a session with a couple. I'm trying to think of like any other advice that you have for maybe, like engagement sessions, for example?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
so, let's say, so I think you gave us like a good idea of the one where we want the dog to look. We have the
Mm-hmm.
little like noises in our pockets, those
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
ideas. But what about trying to maybe entice them to like interact
With their
with,
people.
yeah, other people more and like love on them, or like play with like a stick and jump
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what if they're just kind of like, nah, I'm not interested right now? Is there any tricks for them to actually become more interested in an activity that you want?
One is if you're sitting, like they're both sitting on a bench maybe, and like the dog's in the middle and like looking at the woman, or, and then, but maybe the dog doesn't really want to look. You can have her just kind of blow towards the dog's face. And the
Oh,
dog's usually like, oh, what? Like, so then
oh
the
yeah,
dog
the
moves the
smell.
head. Uh-huh.
That's
So that gets
smart.
them like looking at each other.
Oh, that's good.
Same
Yeah.
thing with the noises. That only works a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll do some combinations of, you know, always people want, like, I always still do a classic, like everyone's looking. And
Yeah.
I usually try to knock that out first. And
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, now let's do some more relationship type things where maybe the couple's looking at each other and I get the expression of the dog still to me. But then maybe I wait for the dog to interact with them and I capture all of them interacting. And, all these same things. I'm like, all right, long lens, capturing the scene. Maybe now we're going in on just like main the dog's face and it's just the couple as the background. So like every scene I'm looking at, backing up, going close. So you're getting all
Mhm.
this variety from the same scene.
Mhm.
Sometimes the dog's looking at me, sometimes the dog's interacting with them. And I usually just direct my couples to like how they get comfortable. And, if there's like a little posing tweak, I'll do that for them. But even with interacting with the dog, I just usually tell them, all right, love on your dog. And if they're doing some weird thing where like their arm closest to the camera is like totally covering up like the dog's face or something, then I'll just kind of I'll direct the pose that they're naturally already giving me
Yeah.
to try to keep it really authentic in the way that they interact with their animals.
Amazing. Those are great tips. And it's funny because now that I think about it, whenever I want my dog Abby to like, whenever I'm holding her in my arms and
Uh-huh.
I want her to like look up at me and pay attention to me, I just blow on her head and then she
Yeah.
just looks up at me. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
yes, it totally works every time. So, oh my God, I'm actually so excited that I have that now in my back pocket. So thanks for that.
Of course.
Amazing. Okay. Is there anything else that you feel that's like top of mind that you wanted to share? I feel like you've covered so much.
Oh my gosh. No, just the importance of really just learning a little bit more about the behavior and natural history piece of these, and that the body language, because truly if
Mhm.
you have a basic, you don't need to have like a PhD on any of this, but if you have a basic understanding of those, you're going to be able to work with the dogs so much better and just direct the session better, and have more confidence from the owners for you to direct the session. And it's just, everything's going to go smoother. The dog's going to have a better experience and your images are going to be better because the dog's more comfortable.
Yes, so true. And okay, and then Nicole, do you have any resources that you wanted to share with anybody on
Oh
this
my
topic?
goodness. I have so many resources. You guys could definitely check out the Hair of the Dog podcast and also the hairofthedogacademy.com. It's a website full of video tutorials. Well, like I said, we're up to like almost 200 podcast episodes. We do have a paid membership, but there's also a ton of free resources on that website as well.
Amazing. And how about IG? Do you hang out on there?
I do.
Yeah.
Nicole Begley official. So it's NicoleBegley official.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. I'm sure you've just like sparked a lot of excitement in some listeners because they're like, oh my God, this is possible. I want to work with animals. This is so
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah. And
So
even
yeah.
if you love like family photography or couples or whatever, like I
Yeah.
feel like because most pet photographers are pretty introverted and they're like, well, I don't want to do people. I feel like there is this giant gap in the market for people that want to do family photography with pets. So like,
Specifically, yeah.
yeah, kids and their pets, like, the mom loves their kids, love the fur kids. Like I want pictures of both of them. And for people
Yeah.
that understand the dogs and can work with the kids is few and far between. So I feel like that market is wide open out there, guys.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I 100% agree. The more you niche down, the more like when those people find you or come across you, they're like, there's someone literally made for me. Like she does this specifically. Like I remember coaching a photographer years ago, maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. And she was just trying to figure out like, I want to attract my dream clients, but like, what are those dream clients? And we went through a whole like little like process during the coaching call. And she ended up niching down to couples with pets for like, she only photographs couples with pets. And she's like, but is that too niche? She's like,
yeah, right.
Yeah, I would love to photograph weddings that have couples and dogs only, or like, or sessions. And I'm like, no, it is not too niche, especially because I've never heard of it before. And there's so many people that have pets and like, and she is doing incredibly well. And it's like, yep, you can do that.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, even in pet photography, I mean, there's people that are purely studio. There's people that are purely outdoors. There's people that are like action in the water. I mean, like you can niche within a niche within a niche.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so many possibilities. So thank you again, Nicole.
Of course. So fun to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
Yay! Thank you so much for hanging out with me and tuning into this episode. If you got value out of it, please feel free to message me on Instagram at Sarah Monica Photo. That's Sarah no H, Monica with a K photo, to let me know. I get so freaking energized hearing from others that what I've said has had a positive impact on their lives. Also, make sure to hit subscribe to the Shine and Thrive podcast to never miss an episode. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm sending you all the productive vibes your way so you have the best week ever.